Hi, welcome. This video is an introduction to JavaScript. We're going to learn what JavaScript is, where JavaScript is used, and what JavaScript can do for us. We're also going to look at the downsides of JavaScript, like the limitations of JavaScript. First of all, let's take a look at definition online. So let's type what is JavaScript? Scripts. All right. There are a lot of definitions here, but my favorite ones are these two here. So it says JavaScript is a scripting language for creating dynamic web page content. So this line, I only need that first one, and the second one being JavaScript is a lightweight interpreted programming language. So those are my two favorite ones. JavaScript is a scripting language for creating dynamic web page content. So a scripting language for creating dynamic web page content. This is something we should be looking at: dynamic web page content, and also a lightweight interpreted programming language. So those 3 points, let me explain what they are. So I'm back in my notepad here. So let's the first one is lightweight. The second one being an interpreted language. And the third one is for creating dynamic web content. All right. So what does it mean for JavaScript to be a lightweight programming language? Well, JavaScript being a lightweight programming language means it doesn't consume much memory. It doesn't consume memory. This goes back to how programs are run in in the computer, like my last video where I explained the basics of code within computers, how code are executed in the computer. So meaning when we write code, for the code to be translated into machine language and then stored in the RAM for the CPU to execute that code, this process does not require much memory when it comes to JavaScript, unlike other programming languages where there is, a lot of memory consumption. But then there are some cases where the code we write in JavaScript can cause us to, consume a lot of memory. But speaking of memory, JavaScript itself is a bit tricky because it doesn't actually interact with the computer's hardware, that is the RAM and CPU. But instead, the code we write in JavaScript is translated for the CPU to understand by another technology. So normally we write code, and this code is stored in memory, and then the memory translates the code to machine code and sends it to the CPU where the code is executed. But with JavaScript, this process is changed. So we write a JavaScript code.js, and then this code is sent to a different technology, which is the JavaScript engine. So the JavaScript engine exist in the browser. So each browser have their engines. Chrome, for instance, has a V8 engine, and Safari has their own engine. I think Firefox engine is Spider Monkey. I don't really remember, but I think I read on it, and that's what I can recall. So every browser has their engine to execute JavaScript code. Now, this, because JavaScript was basically designed to, you know, interact with the web page. But then as time goes on, there were a lot of needs for JavaScript to do other stuff as well. And that is where the engines came in. So these engines, you know, translates the code now to machine code that is later, stored in the memory and then sent back to the CPU. So the process is just shortened by one component, which is the engine, and V8 engine, Chrome for it. So that's it. By JavaScript being an interpreted language, it basically doesn't follow the orthodox rule of code, memory, CPU. This time around is code, engine, memory, then CPU. So now the third point here, which is JavaScript being a dynamic language, this one here. So what does this mean? Well, sorry, it's not a dynamic language. It's used to create dynamic web content. If I go back to the page here, let's take a look again. So it says JavaScript is a scripting language for creating dynamic web page content. Okay, so normally web pages are just HTML and CSS. HTML being, the structure parts, CSS adding styles to the document and to make it look nice. But then aside from that, the page will remain static, meaning everything is positioned where they are. So for users to interact with the web page, so that when a user clicks on something, on a button, for instance, there is a reaction. So there is something happening on the page. Let's say the page and there's a pop-up on the page, So interacting with the page is made possible through JavaScript. And there are a lot of JavaScript, that call them sub languages or frameworks that are developed to also, shorten the process of coding all these things by ourselves. So you can use JavaScript to interact with the page, with a web page, listen to user events, add button clicks to the page, do a lot of things with JavaScript. That is what JavaScript being used to create dynamic web page content means. Now, we just look at what JavaScript is and what it can be used for, but there are a lot of other things that JavaScript can be used. JavaScript can be used to, create mobile apps by using a framework. So we use JavaScript to develop mobile apps using the React Native framework, which is a cross-platform framework, meaning you can use React Native both iOS, Android apps. Yes, as time goes on, we'll also learn how to, build these different things with JavaScript. You can use JavaScript to um, build web apps by using frameworks like React, Vue, and Angular. So there are lots of frameworks that you can use to build JavaScript apps. You can also transform a JavaScript app website into a mobile app by using the PWA process, which is basically changing some, configurations, adding some configurations to your website to make it a downloadable website. It is quite complicated at this point because we are starting with JavaScript. Well, as time goes, we'll also develop PWAs, which is progressive web apps. Another thing you can use JavaScript for is building desktop applications, desktop application by using the Electron, the Electron. It's a tool that you use to transform your websites into a desktop application. That's it for what we can use JavaScript. Of course, JavaScript being a super fantastic language, has its own limitations. So the first one we are going to look at is the interactions with the computer's hardware. So it has the limitations JavaScript. So the first one is the computer's hardware, which is the CPU, the GPU in some cases. JavaScript cannot interact with the hardware directly unless it relies on different technologies for that to happen. We also have a network access control issue with JavaScript. Network access control. Well, this is basically server related issue where JavaScript is only made to request file that exists, that's to send requests to the server and get files that only exist within that server. So it is called a same origin policy, which basically means that the a web page can only send requests to the server, to a single server where it exists. You can only send requests to one server. You cannot send requests to different server with your web page. Even though JavaScript being the same origin policy language, which means your website cannot send requests to a different server, you can actually use JavaScript to make requests to different server, but it requires a lot of configurations from the backend. And that is where, you know, methods like cross origin resource sharing comes in. So this is called CORS, CORS. So CORS is used to make this this request from one website to a different server. Again, configurations, but not a default behavior of JavaScript. One last thing to look at is how JavaScript interacts with the web page by making it dynamic. Because how does JavaScript do that? Because our HTML is the structure of the website. So whatever we see, it is the HTML and the CSS. But JavaScript is invisible, but then it's working there. It does stuff on that page. So to do that, when our document is sent to a server and we as a user, we request for this document from the server, what the browser does is, these are our documents. What the browser does here is to pass this document. And when it's passing this document, different elements on the page, like the h1 tags, the body, everything within the body, each tag, every div element with their attributes, this an ID, everything in the page creates a node, and each node together form a node tree, and that is where DOM comes in. So every node created, so let me call this an h1, and the divs are okay, sorry. So we have our h1 there, we have our div. Basically everything in the document is parsed and then translated to code into a node for the JavaScript to use that on. So this is the ID, and the value of that ID too is a separate thing itself. So the value, the ID is an attribute, and I've explained what attributes are previous course. It's in the HTML series. So this all together, all of these things all together form a tree, right? And this tree is called the DOM tree. And the DOM tree here is basically what helps JavaScript to target each element on the page, on the website, or in our HTML document. So that's just the little tweaks about this possibility of JavaScript changing stuff on the web page, making the web page dynamic. Sorry. So yeah, so that's basically it. JavaScript targets these nodes created by the browser when it is being passed, when the document is being passed, and then does something based on the instruction, the code we write for it to happen. Now, let's take a look at the different ways to use JavaScript in our code. So I have my document here, and let's create an index.html file, ml file. So this is what a JavaScript file looks like. We create it by typing the name of the file, whatever name you want to give it. I'll start with app.js. This is quite small. Sorry, let me make the screen bigger. All right, so our screen is a lot bigger now. Now, let me bring in the boilerplate code, and we can see that, we have our HTML code here. So we have two different ways we use, put JavaScript code in our HTML. We link our JavaScript file to our HTML. So first of all, we have an inline type of JavaScript. So if we type something like an h1 here, and this way of writing JavaScript is actually very bad. So we can see on click, do something like alert. Of course, I will explain what all these things are later on. Alert, hello world. Let me give this h1 a name. Let me call it hello. So what I told this program here to do is that when I click on this hello h1 element here, it should tell the browser to alert user that there is a button click, which does alerts hello world. That was the message passed in. Let's take a look at this in action. I will shift my browser to the side. I will see my code editor to the side, sorry. And then I'll open my browser on the left. And then I'll just push this to the browser here. And then let me click on this. Now I just clicked and you can see that this pop-up came up here. Well, even though this is possible, it is usually considered, so I just click on it again to keep coming up like that. It is considered a bad way to, write JavaScript. Another way to embed JavaScript code in your HTML is to put JavaScript here and link the file to, so you put the script here, and then the source, you tell it to get this file here, right? And then what I'll just put here is alert hello world. So this basically, when I refresh my page now, what will happen is that this code will execute in, and you can see it's executed. It says hello world. Another way to put JavaScript in your code is by putting it here in the body. So just writing script here without the source. Then you can now, put in some HTML code here and say alert. This is a JavaScript function, a built-in function. We'll take a look at what all these things are. So alert hello world. Nice. Hello world from body. So I'll unlink this one so that this code doesn't execute before the page is done loading. So I will just refresh, and you can see it says hello world from body. So that's the different ways to, there are more ways to do this as well. Within the head tag, to be precise. And this part here is where you also link the JavaScript code. Let me say script, and then let's add the source attribute to it. And then this is the actual way to, the ideal way to link your HTML file to your JavaScript code, your JavaScript file. So let's save this and refresh. Let me change this hello world, and let me put some, emojis to make a difference. Let's refresh. Now we can see the hello world text with the emoji there. So basically, those are the ways your JavaScript code to your HTML file. And then you can use these different things to interact with the page. But again, this is going to be a fun ride for us. We are going to learn tons of features and tons of things about JavaScript. Thanks for watching.